Serious, people who have grown up in poverty then managed to get out. What was the biggest culture shock for you? I think the biggest shock for me is when I realized that if I ran out of milk or bread, I could just go get more. I don't have to wait a month to be able to afford it. Also, going on vacations out of state. We never could afford it growing up. I work with a kid who seriously thinks nothing of just taking a week-long vacation to Britain. We're in the US. He's so shocked that I've never been out of the country. I can't afford a friggin' passport, let alone to leave the country and go on vacation. People sending their kids to summer camps and paying for music lessons, sports lessons, private tutoring, etc. I never had music lessons growing up because we couldn't afford it, never learned how to swim, never went to summer camp, never did anything interesting. Now my kids have all those things and it just seems like they're so privileged to have those opportunities to learn so much cool stuff and have so many great experiences. I remember getting so upset when I was probably 12 because all of my friends were so excited to go to their summer camps and I knew that I wouldn't ever be able to go. I went to Girl Scout camp once on scholarship money I made from selling cookies though. Before we had a computer, and the school teacher requires us to submit a paper, my classmates would hand in their papers printed out. As for me, I would have to write down the paper, but because I have poor handwriting, I will ask my older sister to handwrite my paper neatly, and the first time we bought a computer, which came with a free printer, I was really excited to make school assignments. It was overwhelming really, to know that you can write your paper on a keyboard, format it and then print it, and then there's word art. Even if it was not encouraged, I typed the titles of my papers in word art. My friends thought it was funny, but I didn't care. It's word art. How lovely of your older sister to help you. Actually buying things, if that sounds weird. I'm so used to saving and not having that I forget that I can afford a new pair of glasses if I break my old ones. After being in a position or poverty, you learn to deal with stuff that most people would view as inconvenient. I've been teased on a few occasions because I'll go without stuff even though I can get things for myself now that I'm an adult. Spending guilt and the feeling that economic doom is pending above your head if you make the smallest of purchases. I know that feeling and it's pretty difficult to get out of the cycle. The way people talk. Just hearing people talk about things like drinking green tea and how they bought new kitchen countertops this weekend and casually dropping crap like that time I was in Thailand. Seems silly, but at first it was weird hearing people talk like the people on TV. I also realized I have an absolutely filthy mouth. I didn't realize the way I talked was so bad, but I am by far the most inappropriate person in my workplace. Not even when I got out, but while in school, it blew my mind that other kids actually got clothes more than once, twice a year. I only got for my birthday sometimes, and before school started in September. I'm right with you. I never asked for anything because I knew on some level that we couldn't afford it. I remember being shocked that my father said I should get a new dress for my first homecoming dance when I had just gotten school clothes. My family was quite poor when I was a young child. We were never homeless, but we did sometimes skip a meal or two or maybe live without electricity or running water for a while. I got used to that lifestyle and I took care of the things I had and I learned to repair things that were broken. I joined the military after high school and I couldn't believe all of the people my age who would waste food or throw things away that weren't even broken. I also found it quite amusing when the barracks had no hot water, heat, etc. Many people lost their minds. Going from every dollar being important to fairly cost insensitive is a big change. It's great not to sweat meals out or worry about bills, and being able to save fairly large sums for investment or major purchases. It's nice to be able to buy the nicer things that will last instead of the shittiest version of everything and needing to replace lots of crap, and always wishing I could upgrade. It's nice having a frame for my bed, an apartment of my own, and not having to go to a laundromat. It's fantastic that I can help my family and give them gifts or money or pay for stuff when we hang out. It's just nice. People who tell you money isn't that important have either always had it or never had it. It's pretty freaking important. How freaking delicious vegetables are. We never had fresh produce growing up, maybe canned, if it was donated to the church, but even that was rare. Hearing people complain about how they don't like vegetables blows my mind. When you're so used to eating everything preservative laden or on the verge of going bad, fresh food tastes amazing. Yes, it was like a light bulb went off in my head when I realized, for the first time in my life, that I could buy fruits and vegetables to eat for dinner if I wanted. My childhood dinners were cheap meat and potatoes or pancakes. Having a freaking car, man. Seriously, you have no idea how good it feels to just be able to go wherever you want whenever you want and not bum rides off of friends, family and public transport. Most children fantasize about this and receive the same culture shock when they're teens. But imagine not having a car for half of your adult life and still having a job and having to go to college. It's freaking nice having a car that I paid for with my hard-earned money. I didn't have a car until I was 27, so I know how you feel. Public transportation is terrible in my area, so I used to wake up at 5 AM every morning just to make it to my job at 8:30 AM and then I wouldn't get home until after 7 PM. Always having food in the house. I'm blown away that at any point I can make myself something with fresh ingredients. I still eat lettuce that's almost on its way out and dairy that passed expiry dates though. Frick, I'm well off and I still eat stuff past the expiration date. Grew up in a relatively poor town. Then I ended up going to a private college on a scholarship and people actually have nice parents who they want to spend time with. Clothes. The fact that people actually spend hundreds of dollars on clothes. For one shirt, they are willing to shell out $80, which is the monetary equivalent of 8 meals at McDonald's or 2 weeks worth of groceries. Side note, when I was younger, we'd go to thrift shops to buy clothes. Once 2008 to 2009 came around, it was suddenly cool to buy clothes at thrift shops. I'm guessing it still is. It kind of upset me once I realized it was finally cool to buy hand-me-downs because back then, I'd lie to other kids my age when they'd ask what store I got my clothes from because I was so ashamed that they were from the Goodwill. I've never had the luxury of buying a shirt for $80 and I'll never spend that money on a shirt even if I had all the money in the world. It's such an extravagance. I grew up middle class and I can't even justify spending $80 on a shirt. I feel guilty when I buy a single $16 dress at Target. That other kids ate regularly, needed to bathe, and come home each night. The other families in my neighborhood were all in the same boat, moving all the time, new neighbors continuously, rent late, no power, etc. I lucked out. My dad saved up for a private investigator, got custody of his 3 kids 7, 9, 11, and suddenly we had to go to school, wear real clothes, i.e. not just a dirty shirt, no shoes. We had dinner together. It was a change I'll never forget. A sad story I learned through chance. Almost 10 years after the worst of it, I met a stranger who would bathe me, feed me, and dress me in her son's clothes. I'm female. When I was 6. Awkward. I opened the door. She's my boyfriend's friend's mom. No recollection or fur on my part and she starts bawling. Running to fire, is that you? I would dress you, send you out into the world again, feed you. I always hoped you'd make it. Other kids' parents would make lunches for me and my siblings. They were better than the free lunches at school and I didn't have to line up in front of the whole school to get those awesome homemade lunches. The fact how fast and how blind you become to the plight of those who are still poor. It's like that world becomes somehow invisible to you. I'm not rich, but I managed to get by and I own some real estate, etc. Going to the dentist is a no-brainer to me. I just make the appointment and pay the bill without giving it any thought. Recently, having had a chat with a single mom on almost minimum wage, she has education and works for the government, not McDonald's, which makes it even more sad somehow, who was scraping together money, cent by cent, to get a tooth pulled out. No money to repair it and it had gone beyond repair. I realized it. I'm blind. Doesn't matter, I had days in my youth where I had no food. I'm still blind. That makes me completely paranoid about politicians. I don't really think they are aware of the things they are blind to, and the fact that some politicians wave their meager and poor background around like some sort of vaccine against that sort of blindness no longer has any value to me. I know this feeling. The day after you get a home, all the homeless people start disappearing. They're still there. You just can't see them. I am in my 40s, so this dates me a little. My mother always switched price tags when we shopped. This was before barcode scanning. I thought it was normal and did it myself until I found out it was illegal while in my early teens. Also, a huge culture shock was how wasteful the world can be. We used everything until it was absolutely useless. And throwing food away was a sin. I still eat every bite of food on my plate. If I serve myself, I will only put on my plate what I can finish. If I eat at a restaurant, I will eat everything or take home leftovers. I can't waste food. I realized rich people do drugs for fun, while my mates from deprived background does drugs to run away from sorrow's reality. Drugs are escapism for the poor, and entertainment for the rich. In poverty, the definition of rich is anyone not completely poor. Your parents' car is not 15 years old, the paint is actually glossy and not peeled and matte, none of your utilities are off, you are rich. That's how it was when I grew up. You call so many people rich when truly they are not and have problems of their own. When I was growing up, I thought the people with rusted old cars were well off because they had a car. Bro, a question I can answer. My biggest shock has been watching people who grew up with financial stability talk to their kids about money. Money for me as a kid was something to cause anxiety. We never had enough. Not enough to eat. Not enough to pay bills. Not enough to live really. When I see my friends with their kids now, we all make more than a decent living. Their relationship with money is so strategic and thoughtful. How am I going to make the most out of what I have? How to show my kids how to come out ahead and make good financial choices. These were not the lessons I learned. Mine were based around collecting things for safety. If I can afford this now, or even if I can't, can I get it now and I could sell it if something goes wrong? I still find myself fighting the urge to buy my kids everything because I could. Not literally, of course, but it doesn't even matter to them. I realize I'm not buying them stuff. I'm buying stuff for a little anxious me. Money equals anxiety is still the worst for me. I'm only calm when I have enough in my account and I know more is coming, otherwise my anxiety levels go through the roof. I'm working on it. It just takes time and a budget seems to help. There hasn't been much of a culture shock as it's been a slow, steady climb up. I've had plenty of time to acclimate. It's more like a series of pleasant surprises for me. Doing things that cost a lot up front yet save money in the long run is a cool feeling. Like a trip to Costco, for example. I can buy $200 worth of chicken, veggies, etc. instead of just eating the dollar menu at MCD's every day. Being able to afford an XB1 and have furniture that matches is a fun perk too. I can just buy a video game whenever I want, and I can have fast food whenever I want. I can wear clothes that fit me. I can just do things because I want to do them. I have no idea why it was such a foreign concept to me. I guess I never realized that it was even possible. Blew my mind one day when my buddy was like, hey, let's go watch a movie in X city, and I could actually say, yeah, let's do that. Like, just drive 20 minutes on a whim, get dinner, watch a movie. Biggest shock of growing up for me, honestly. Having a fridge and pantry full of food that I like never gets old. Growing up there was not much to eat and it was mostly crap. It's been at least a decade since I lived like that, but I still open up my pantry and marvel at all the treats and options. There's really nothing like being well nourished. Do you ever get really uncomfortable panicky if you start running low on groceries? I struggled when I first got out on my own and had some pretty lean weeks, like skipping meals and oatmeal or rice for dinner. Now I get kind of stressed out when the cupboard is getting bare. Let's just say whoever said money can't buy happiness never had to make toast on a coat hanger over a fire made from borrowed bread served plain. Yeah, I don't understand when people romanticize being poor. Being poor freaking sucks. Buying food has been the biggest to me. I remember being at the grocery with my well-off friend that I was visiting for the weekend. I was about 19 at the time. We were shopping for things to make for dinners and he always paid for groceries, so I like to cook to feel like I was contributing. I remember we were picking out vegetables for some recipe and I go to grab Roma tomatoes which were priced by the pound. So without thinking too much I grab some tomatoes, walk over to the scale and measure out as close to 1 pound of tomatoes as I can. As I'm walking back to him in the cart, I guess I had a look on my face. So he asks me what's up and I say that I'm not sure if this is going to be enough tomatoes for the recipe. So he flatly says, well then get more. That caught me off guard and I start into the but this is a pound of, and he cuts me off and says, if you think we need more then get more. It seems like such a simple obvious thing, but it was a very different view in life than I was accustomed to. Now years later, with my own career and place and family, I don't ever buy things based on unit. When I grocery shop, I buy how much I think we'll need, and it's a huge privilege to be able to shop that way. To keep things under control, we make a menu before we shop for the week so we know exactly what we need for our meals. That helps a lot when you grow up poor and now have the ability to see something you like and get it without considering if it's going to impact something else like the electric bill or gas or rent. Oh, and bread. Bread is probably the most noticeable thing that I kinda splurge on. No more random brand $1 loaves for us anymore. I head straight to the brownberry stuff. Either honey wheat or buttermilk. I am completely okay with spending $3 for a loaf of that. $2.50 when it's on sale. TLDR. Grocery shopping was the biggest shock and change. I loved it when my so and I finally moved in together and decided that food would be the one thing we didn't budget on. It was so liberating to just go and buy whatever I wanted without looking at the prices. I love our good food policy so much, especially since I grew up with my mom coupon clipping and always trying to save every penny at the grocery store. That places like Red Lobster and Outback Steakhouse aren't places you dress up to go to. I was out on a date with the guy who would eventually be my husband. We were starting to get hungry and he suggested grabbing food and brought up Red Lobster. I told him I wasn't sure. I wasn't dressed good enough for it. He sort of boggled at me and said I was fine. I went in and was so self-conscious until I saw that there were guys eating there that looked like they walked straight off a construction site. I'm still getting used to being okay buying stuff for myself, especially frivolities like clothes and makeup. I used to like to go to the mall to window shop. It still irritates my husband when I see something I like, go up to it, say something like, hey, they have this in my size. And wow, the price is really reasonable. I would love to wear this at insert event or place here, then turn and walk away. It seems to be a struggle for him to convince me that I can in fact buy clothes that cost more than $15. How oblivious people are to the things they have compared to those less fortunate. Things are greatly taken for granted. Thank you. I just finished paying the bills and bemoaned the fact that we couldn't go out this weekend. But all the bills are paid and there is food and heat in my house. I really needed to hear that. That your shoes are supposed to match your outfit. This may be more of a lady thing, but I got teased all the time for my mismatched shoes when I first started working in a nice office. When I was a kid I had one pair of shoes and one roll of duct tape. The end. It's present for guys too. All my friends in software dev have 10 plus pairs of shoes to go with different pants outfits, and I still wear some beat up Vans. That's a step up from 5-year-old Walmart shoes. Nice shirts. I seem to have a thing for really nice shirts. And silk ones. I love silk shirts. I work in an industrial facility. Work boots, jeans, and silk shirts. Yes, I catch heck for it. It makes me feel good, so I indulge myself. What shocked me, and continues to shock me, is how little interest the people around me have in wanting to help others. When I was poor, the family friends were always helping each other, and when we had any extra money we'd buy new school supplies for the poorer kid across the street. Our neighbors donated food and clothes to the church drives. Now I'm surrounded by people with lots of disposable income, and they just go out to nice restaurants every day and buy all the new tech gadgets. None of my co-workers donate to anything or volunteer for anything. It's crazy to see all this money and no desire to help anyone. I guess since they were never in need themselves, they can't picture what just donating $100 worth of toiletry supplies to the local women's shelter can do for people, or what donating toys regularly to the refugee center can do for those kids who have nothing. So, I'm not never work again wealthy, but I do well. I'm one of 7 kids and we were pretty poor. Not fear for your life poor, but poor with a certain social safety net. American poor. I since got a good degree without debt, have a stable job, married a financially stable dude, and am in no debt to the world. That's pretty rich. Anyway, the biggest thing for me is social legitimacy. When you have a little bit of money, you can do things that you couldn't before. Knowing that you have a safety net makes you more ballsy and confident and less at people's mercy. Things like buying a new top for an interview are huge. The other thing you can do when you're well off is plan ahead, save, make better financial decisions. Between those two things, I truly understand now the privileges that I have. Yep, what's the saying? It's expensive to be poor. Buying a new good quality piece of clothing. Just the ease at which people can buy something nice and pay a little extra money for it. I grew up as poor as you can be in the US. Stints of homelessness, shoplifting food for dinner, new clothes to me wear whatever was half off at the thrift store, before it was trendy. When I got a little more money, then it was the sale rack at Walmart for real new clothes. When I had more money I was moving to a colder climate. Upon the very good advice of a friend I went to the mall to find a nice warm professional wool coat, and not Walmart. I went into Nordstrom and found a lovely pea coat on sale. Paid the extra $15 to have it tailored. I believe the total price on that coat 15 years ago was $150 US. After I paid for it I went into the restroom and vomited. And I sat in the stall for about 20 minutes shaking and calming myself down. It was literally the nicest thing I had ever owned. I had that dang thing until about 2 years ago when I lost weight and it got too big on me. Then I donated it. It looked and fit nearly as good as the day I bought it. I make way more money now, and I still shop at thrift stores. But I don't throw up anymore when I invest in a good pair of shoes, or a bra, or a piece of furniture. Buying something that won't break in 6 months is so luxurious. LOL. Being forced to buy cheap, easily breakable things is another component of the poor tax. It's amazing how much extra money you have to spend when you are poor because of having to replace so much so often. Growing up I was not part of the richest family, but we had a house, electricity, running water. We could have been worse off as some people are, but we were below the poverty line. We ate a lot of dried beans, rice, and cornbread since they were all cheap to make. As I got older my single mom got different jobs and eventually ended up making good money in real estate. To this day I'm not a fan of red beans and rice. Living in the southern states everyone loves their red beans and rice, but I still don't like eating beans and rice. When I was in high school I dated a girl whose family was fricked up. Mum was a drunk artist who refused to get a job and work. Dad was a con-man used car salesman. Imagine the stereotypical greasy cartoon used car guy, and it was him. Brother was an addict and thief. And younger sister was the usual spoiled bratty entitled girl who was too busy giving BJs to get popular. Her family left me with some weird and crazy stories. They also had no cash to keep the lights on or buy food since dad was too busy job hopping all the time to avoid people he had ripped off. I'd buy her food and personal hygiene products since her family couldn't afford anything and she had no job. Basically tried to be the good boyfriend etc, but her culture shock was that she could not understand the value of money, especially large amounts. The concept of having more than $20 actually scared and frightened her. If I purchased something or paid a bill she would ask how much it was and then ask questions like how many zeros are behind that? How did you get that much? How could you possibly have $100? She was by no means stupid and is currently working on her doctorate, but she just could not understand money, having never had any. We eventually broke up. She left her family, went out on her own, worked hard, and now understands the value of money and is doing really well. I've dated the exact girl you described. I broke up with her because, unfortunately, something within that upbringing led her to believe that every word she speaks is gospel and anyone who ever disagrees with her is unquestionably wrong. How little people understand poverty, that they don't realize it isn't the fault of the poor, that it's an entirely different way of thinking and existing, that no one cares about you, not the government nor any of its schemes actually give a dang about helping you. How disheartening it is to be the scum of the earth because of something you can't control. I grew up at or near poverty, raised mostly by my mother. She pushed us to work hard in school and that education was the way to a better future. I attended Cornell for engineering and was accepted into a summer research program at Harvard. I was so shocked by how Harvard spent money that I actually had a crisis of conscience. The group I visited had an Italian leather couch in their lounge. You'd come into the lounge to eat your lunch and they had covered the large table with a buffet of sushi for the students in the group, but there was no occasion. I am not judging anyone there. It was just crazy to me at the time to see these luxury things being treated like they were commonplace. When I went back to school in the fall, I was awarded a fellowship of $1,000 that I didn't apply for or anything. I ended up finding out it was just because I was in the top 3 in my class for GPA in my major. I felt terrible, like I didn't earn that or deserve it. I felt like I was getting caught up in this culture where I was just being rewarded disproportionately for doing what I was supposed to do and would have done for free. I seriously considered dropping out because that wasn't how I wanted it to be. I did make it through and work in industry now, but I still live pretty frugally. The first time I tried milk that hadn't been mixed with water. I still can't drink milk. Full cream is especially awful. As the first person in my extended family to get a university degree, it took me a long time to realize how important networking was. I had only learned about it in cynical terms, like the old boys club and it's not what you know, it's who you know. I didn't want to be part of a corrupt elite, and I assumed I wouldn't be accepted anyway, even though I did have upper middle class friends in high school. So I never joined a fraternity or any other club. My extracurricular activities were nerdy and solitary, writing more papers. For instance, if I had paid attention, I could have helped my favorite professor become the head of the department, but I only learned about his ambition when he left. Once I told another professor I didn't fully understand an article I had found. She just called the author right away and asked him to explain. Later, I realized they were married. I was glad I toned down my criticism in the paper I wrote about the article, but I resented it. It seemed incestuous to me, even though the author taught at a different university in a different field. I made more friends in my first full-time job than as a university student. When I quit that job and became self-employed, I assumed my competitors would never want to help me. Luckily, I did join a discussion group for freelancers that also organized meetups. After a year or so, I finally understood that it's a basic human need to work with people you trust because you've met them in person. Since then, colleagues have referred clients to me. I've referred clients to others. I published a book because a friend liked my blog, and I'm renting office space from a friend of a colleague I met at a conference. I never go to networking events where you exchange business cards with everyone. I prefer workshop or parties where you can have fun and really get to know each other quickly. I also have given a few informal lectures myself, including one about networking online. TLDR. Don't be afraid to start networking if you're not used to it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.